Some viral videos make us laugh while some inspire, but others leave behind something much darker. These are clips that should have never been filmed. These are 7 disturbing viral videos that ended in tragedy. In early 2022, a video quietly surfaced on Douyin, China's version of TikTok. The footage was grainy, but what it captured was unforgettable. A woman stood alone in a makeshift shack. There was no door, no light, no warmth. Only a rusted chain fastened tightly around her neck and bolted to the wall behind her. She didn't blink. She didn't move. Her name, it was said, was Yang, and 8 children called her mother.
你这饭量了吗？饭量了吗？你能不能我这样说话，你能不能听懂？我跟你说话能听懂吧？不能。
At first, local authorities dismissed the incident. They claimed that she was mentally unwell, that she was being cared for, but public outrage swelled, and questions refused to go away. Hu Jiyin, former editor of the state-run Global Times, remarked that anyone with basic decency could see that the woman had been treated inhumanely. Eventually, after a lot of pressure from activists, she was identified as Zhuao Huamei, a woman reported missing more than 20 years earlier. It was revealed that she had been trafficked from Yunnan province, sold into a forced marriage, and held in captivity for decades. The children she bore were fathered by the man who had purchased her, but the horror of Zhuao Huamei's story is not new. Back in the 1980s, as China's market reforms relaxed population controls, human trafficking began to take hold. Women were abducted from Yunnan, Guizhou, and Sichuan, trafficked into provinces where demand for marriage partners outweighed supply. By the late 1980s, it was estimated that up to 3,000 women from Yunnan were being abducted into the area each year. A nationwide crackdown in 2000 would eventually lead to a decline, but for thousands like Zhuao Huamei, help had come too late. 3 individuals, including Huamei's husband and 2 accomplices, were arrested and detained, and eventually, 6 people, including the man known as Dong, received prison sentences ranging from 8 to 13 years. Huamei had lived in silence. She had been chained like an animal. And when her face was finally seen, it was not by those meant to protect her, but by strangers scrolling through their phones. In the early hours of New Year's Day, when Bourbon Street is usually flooded with laughter, music, and confetti, chaos broke through the celebration. At approximately 3:15 a.m., 42-year-old Samson Den Jabor drove a pickup truck straight into a dense crowd of revelers gathered around the French Quarter of New Orleans. The collision was only the beginning. After mowing down pedestrians, Jabor stepped out of the vehicle and began firing. A shootout with police erupted in the street. It ended minutes later with Jabor finally shot. But by then, the damage had already been done. 14 people were dead, including Jabor himself. At least 57 others were injured, some by gunfire, most from the initial impact. Samsud Din Jabor was a Houston native, born and raised in the United States. An ISIS flag was found in his vehicle along with rants about his allegiance to the Islamic State, his crumbling personal life, and cryptic mentions of wanting to erase everything. The FBI labeled the attack as an act of domestic terrorism, but some experts have speculated that his radicalization may have been less about ideology and more about projection. A last refuge for a man collapsing under the weight of isolation, emotional volatility, and likely untreated mental illness. And this theory makes sense. In his final monologues, he rambled about his recent divorce, betrayals, and an apparent desire to kill his own family. His weapons were homemade. His explosives were poorly designed. There were no proper detonators, no safety mechanisms, just raw, reckless intention. The FBI described them as the work of someone with more rage than skill. This wasn't the work of a cold, calculating terrorist. Jabor's troubled mind had been deteriorating for years, but the warning signs were largely ignored by both those around him and the systems in place to protect public safety. His increasing isolation, emotional instability, and erratic behavior were clear indicators of a man on the brink. Friends and family members had described him as someone who had withdrawn into himself, obsessed with conspiracies, and frustrated by the collapse of his personal life. His online rants and communications gave a window into his fractured psyche, showing a man who felt betrayed by everyone he knew, including his own family. Yet, despite these growing red flags, there was little intervention or support from mental health services, law enforcement, or his community. Had these issues been addressed earlier, perhaps the tragedy that unfolded on New Year's Day could have been prevented. Security footage from a Woolworths in South Africa caught what, at first, looked like your run-of-the-mill shoplifting incident. A woman had been approached by staff for trying to slip some things out without paying, the kind of awkward confrontation that usually ends with a receipt or an apology. But immediately, they called security. She hit the floor. Hard.
I fucking love the village.
What happened next could have been ripped straight from a low-budget horror film. Her body convulsed, limbs flailing like a jacked-up zombie. Then came the voice, deep, otherworldly, speaking in a tongue no one could place. Not Zulu, not Afrikaans, not English, just something else. Someone nearby started filming and the clip went viral almost instantly. Some swore it was possession. Others claimed it was epilepsy. A few shrugged and called it acting gone too far, and maybe that's exactly what it was. A distraction, a last-ditch attempt to dodge the consequences, because curiously, no charges were filed, no name was released, and just like that, the woman vanished. There were no headlines, no updates, no follow-ups. But the footage, it stuck around. Uploaded, re-uploaded, chopped into TikToks and paranormal YouTube compilations with names like Real Demon Caught on Camera, South African edition. And in every comment section, one reoccurring question. Was she possessed? Or just really committed to not paying for that lipstick? 27-year-old Shivani Dabale had traveled from Pune to Gao for the new year. She wasn't alone. She had come with a friend. Maybe it was on a whim. Maybe it was planned, but at some point that afternoon, she paid to be strapped into a paraglider at Kari Plateau. Flying with her was 26-year-old Saman Nepali, the operator assigned to guide the flight. They took off just before sundown, sometime between 4:30 and 5 p.m. And then something snapped. Mid-air, one of the ropes gave way, the paraglider buckled, and the two slammed into the rocks below. Shivani and Saman suffered severe fractures and neither survived. They were rushed to Gao Medical College, but both were declared dead on arrival. Police say the paraglider was flying low, that the rope wasn't reinforced, that no license was issued for this flight. The company, Hike and Fly, had been operating on Kari Plateau without proper clearance, and the owner, Shekhar Azada, had been warned before. Local officials had passed resolutions asking that paragliding in the area be banned entirely. The terrain was dangerous, wind conditions were unpredictable, and yet operations had continued. Just days after the incident, an offense was registered against Razada for culpable homicide. Police say he knowingly allowed unlicensed pilots to take tourists into the air, fully aware of the risks and doing it anyway for profit. A week later, Gao's tourism department finally stepped in, suspending all paragliding activities across the state. But for Shivani and Saman, it was already too late. The footage starts like any other fun vacation video. It was supposed to be a memory, captured on film. You know, lighthearted, carefree. But for Janice Bowles, 58, from Bristol, what began as an innocent trip to Egypt ended in tragedy. It was August 28, 2023, and Janice was on a Thomas Cook holiday in Hurghada with her two daughters. The family had gathered for a ride on the infamous banana boat, the one where you hold on tight and hope to stay afloat. Janice, sitting behind her daughter Hannah Barcroft, was having the time of her life, or so it seemed. Moments later, the boat picked up speed and the inflatable tipped over, throwing passengers in every direction. Her daughter, watching helplessly from a distance, shouted desperately, "She's dead. She's dead." In the chaos that followed, a crew member tried pulling Janice back onto the boat, but her head kept going under. Finally, Janice was pulled aboard the speedboat, but by that point her lips had already turned blue. Attempts at CPR were unsuccessful. The family was in disbelief. Janice Bowles, The loving, funny mother was gone. Her daughter later shared the tragic news on social media, shocking extended family and friends. The holiday had taken a deadly turn, and the family's last memory was captured in devastating video. A simple outing, meant to create joy, now became a final moment of terror, gone forever in the harsh reality of a vacation gone wrong. What was meant to be a joyous graduation celebration in Peru turned into a catastrophic disaster. A high school party in San Martin, Peru took a terrifying turn when the very floor beneath the teens' feet gave way, sending them tumbling into a massive hole. The footage, which was shared on TikTok on December 17th, quickly gained viral attention, amassing 4.2 million views. The scene was set. Teenagers in sharp attire, celebrating their hard-earned graduation with music, laughter, and dance. But the revelry didn't last long. As the teens gathered in a tightly packed group on the dance floor, the floor suddenly gave way. A deep, cavernous hole opened up beneath them, and at the exact same time, they fell in, swallowed by the earth as dust and debris filled the air. The music stopped abruptly as the chaos unfolded. The DJ, stunned into silence, looked on as bystanders scrambled to help the fallen students. The dramatic scene looked like something straight out of an apocalyptic movie. Thankfully, the event wasn't fatal. The paramedics were called as a precaution, and after a quick assessment, the all-clear was given. The music resumed, the lights dimmed again, and the party continued. Later in the party, the students were found making jokes like "blood on the dance floor," literally, and "break the dance floor." Been there, done that.